I'd like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar on Transition Monitoring Process Training. This is based on the Division of Developmental Disabilities Guideline number 67. Today in the studio, I have Vonda Powell and Michelle Brown with the Division of Developmental Disabilities. When I turn this over to them, I'll let them tell you a bit more about themselves. Just a couple quick housekeeping items before I do that. Your line's been muted upon entry. However, as a backup, we suggest that you go ahead and mute your line as well. If you have questions about the content being presented, we ask that you submit those to the Q&A box. We will not be answering questions live today. However, those questions will be compiled and an FAQ document will accompany the recording and presentation that will be sent out via the Division email blast. If you signed up to receive the Division email blast, you go to the Division of Developmental Disabilities homepage, and you will see over on the right side of the screen, toward the bottom, there's a yellow rectangle that says Get Email Updates. Quick process. If you have questions that are technical in nature, you lose sound, something gets wonky, you can submit those items through the chat box. I do my best to help you through those, and we'll see if we can get you up and running. And that is all I have, so I am going to slide my mic on over to Vonda, and I will let her and Michelle get started.
Good morning. I'm Brown with the Rolla Regional Office. I'm the Provider Relations Supervisor, and I supervise the Community Living Coordinator, or the CLC, in the Rolla office. As I said, with me today is Vonda Powell. She is the Community Living Coordinator from the Kansas City Regional Office, and together we are presenting the information on Guideline 67.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Heike. This is Vonda Powell from Kansas City, Community Living Coordinator there. And what an honor to be with you all today, and thank you for joining us this morning. I just want to take a second to recognize each of you and your hard work, and how proud I am to be part of the state. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
All right. To delve a bit deeper into Guideline 67 to enhance everyone's understanding of what is being reviewed as part of that transition process. We'll provide some history as to why the guideline was developed, review the marks embedded in the guideline, and what the CLCs are expected to do with the information, including entry into apps and how that gets captured in the annual trend report. Additionally, we wanted to take this opportunity to share a few general reminders with both the TCM and provider agencies.
So I think it's probably good to look back and look at some date reminders. The Community Transition Manual was implemented July 1st of 2016, and 67 was developed in conjunction with the Community Transition Manual and was implemented November 1st of 2017. Guideline 67 was created and implemented to assist with identifying trends around transitions. The purpose is to provide continuity of care for individuals as they move from one location to another, shape consistency throughout the state.
The community process is driven by waiver assurances and HCBS requirements. The Division PD is responsible to ensure compliance with these authorities, and listed below are just a few. Housing is separate from services. Individuals and families live in communities that are safe and in homes they can afford. Individuals and families are in control of their home environments. On many slides, you will find authority language which supports the monitoring process, and those are in red. And here we have the HCBS rule states the setting is selected by the individual from among setting options, including non-disability specific settings.
You know, HCBS is really all about choice, isn't it, Michelle?
Yes, it is.
It's so important. So transition monitoring in conjunction with support coordination, we CLCs, or community living coordinators, help link the individuals, guardians looking for residential options, with providers and help to plan for a smooth transition when they move. Guideline 67 applies to the transition monitoring process to be used by all CLCs, TCM entities, and providers. CLC at each regional office will complete an ongoing monitoring of transitions as they occur. So this is not just a one-point-in-time process. These components of the process can take several weeks and maybe a couple months to complete.
Transition and transfer process. Specific marks required for all transitions will form the basis for this monitoring. Benchmarks were developed to focus on the essential activities that need to be completed throughout the transition. The benchmarks do not cover everything, but are the most prominent issues which were identified through various transitions. There are components of transition that may need to be completed as well, such as accurately completing and submitting transfer forms when necessary.
So let's benchmark 1. Was individual placed on the database, the CRD, Consumer Referral Database, most typically called the database? Basically, the residential provider is not responsible for ensuring the individual is added. However, the provider agency could be accountable if a situation occurs where the TM wasn't included in initial conversations between provider agencies about individuals and guardians' desire to change residential settings, or plan decisions were made without a TCMSC knowing. This was their informed choice.
Ensures we are in compliance with the CMS assurances on individual choice and provider. The support coordinator early in the discussion will ensure the entire process is implemented as established in the transition manual and in Guideline 67.
Now we have saying as CLCs, communication, and it starts at the very beginning. So let's talk about when the Consumer Referral Database is required. It's required when someone wants to change residential service providers and is transitioning from non-residential, if the individual receives PA or CI services and their provider also offers residential services, or the residential provider has given notice to an individual and they need a new residential provider. Regardless of whether or not the individual or guardian has selected a provider, once placement services has been approved by the ROUR committee as placement, the SC must submit all Consumer Referral Database information items for the CLC to place them on the database. So here are the things that we're going to need from you: the Consumer Referral Profile, the Housemate Compatibility Tool, up-to-date ISP. Now, along with those, there are probably additional things for people who have additional needs, like a behavior support plan or a transition documentation if they're coming out of a HAB center. So additional documents can be as well.
Database not required. Individual is currently funded via Children's Division under a child-specific contract, and the funding source is the only change, for example, going to an IDA. Individual requests to change setting types within the same provider, for example, going from a group home setting to an ISL setting. This requires being added to the database as the individual has already made their choice of provider. They simply desire a different setting within the same organization.
Great. Here are some additional reminders for using the database. The individual needs to be on there for at least 2 weeks to really ensure choice. May come in with an idea of who they'd like to support them, but putting them on there may actually help open their eyes to additional providers they didn't know about. In the event that a CLC discovers a referral has not been placed on the Consumer Referral Database, the CLC will work very closely with the support coordinator to make sure that they get the information from them to place them on as soon as possible. The CLC also has to check the sex offender registry for adults, and for juveniles, we actually check the Highway Patrol Sex Offender Registry and check with the juvenile office of the county in which they reside.
Benchmarks to the sending support coordinator and to the providers. Was the Housemate Compatibility Tool used prior to selecting a new provider or move to a new home within the same provider? As CLCs facilitating transitions, our intention is not to be hyper-focused on the use of the Compatibility Tool. It is our role, however, to ensure the tool was utilized as per the transition manual, which states, the sending SC shall use the Housemate Compatibility Tool to assist the team in considering individual preferences in the selection of a home. The tool will be added to the referral information in the Consumer Referral Database when completed. You may ask questions during transition meetings, such as inquiring about house visits, of which more than one may be needed, over visits, community visits, etc., in an effort to ensure the team has considered all aspects of compatibility before the move occurs. We are asking that this tool reveal the new housemates will be the very best of friends, but the goal is to help ensure the housemates won't antagonize one another or that support needs of one housemate will work with the support needs of the new housemate and not cause additional stress to the individuals or to the staff. This also reveals the potential need for additional staffing in the home or additional staff training.
You know, I was thinking, Michelle, I have never moved into a living situation where I didn't have some background information on someone I'd be living with. Why would we do that to an individual that we support, right?
Exactly.
So we have to use the Housemate Compatibility tool to prove how great they really will be together, maybe pinpoint some areas that could be tweaked and will still work, or really show some red flags as to why it won't work and stop that move before it becomes an issue. So we're Housemate Compatibility tool. The individual receiving residential supports requests to move into a new setting within the same provider agency. If the individual receiving residential supports required to move to a new setting within the new provider, or the individual approved for residential services and seeking a provider for the first time. So Housemate Compatibility tool, in short, will always be used, in other words, to make sure that we have the very best match possible.
We try to flesh out circumstances under which it wouldn't be utilized, and it was pretty much when the same three housemates are just picking up and moving across town. No change in staff, no change in housemates.
Right.
How to use the tool. This tool will be completed by an individual who is seeking a living situation with housemates, and it shall be completed by the housemate who may have someone moving in with them. This is the best way to document all parties' thoughts and concerns are taken into consideration. The tool will be completed by the individual with support as needed from someone who knows the individual well. Information is considered by the planning team in determining compatibility of two or more housemates. It is essential to also ensure the needs, wants, and desires of the individuals already living in the home are discussed and shared with the planning team, which is why it is essential to include the individuals already living in the setting in the completion of the tool and sharing of that information.
That piece is so important. It's not just another piece of paperwork to get done and make sure you turn in to us. It is a team comparison tool for people who know the individuals best, both someone who's looking at moving in and people who live there. Will this really work? So it's a tool that is used by the team members. Well, on mark number 3, a transition meeting held prior to the move. I sure hope so, because that is how the whole entire team comes together to ensure that everything is going to go really smoothly for that person. Formal transition meetings will occur for the vast majority of transitions. These occur for individuals who are moving from a non-DMH residential setting into a DMH residential setting, maybe moving from one provider to another, or going from a lesser to more restrictive, or vice versa.
TIC shall occur for individuals who will be transitioning to a new TCM entity, even when the provider is staying the same, for individuals who are moving into or out of a regional office area, for individuals who are transitioning from a crisis placement to a new provider, and for individuals who had an emergency situation where an initial or pre-move meeting did not occur. Ideally, there will be an initial meeting held before somebody moves. For the purposes of this training, an initial post-move meeting is defined as the first meeting after the emergency move has occurred and the meeting was not able to be held prior to the move. The follow-up post-move meeting is still required and typically occurs around 30 days after the move. Regarding moves, the frequently asked questions document attached to the Community Transition Manual does state CLC and SC will ensure the transition meeting is arranged as soon as possible, but no later than 2 weeks following the placement. As part of the transition monitoring process, if that initial post-move meeting is not conducted within 2 weeks, this will likely be entered into APS as a finding by the CLC. The Central Regional Office and TCM provider will maintain responsibility for the individual until a transition meeting can be held. The parts of the process that can be followed still should be once the team is made aware of the emergency move. Agency moves do always require the CLC to be involved, but the process must still be followed and documented The residential community moves checklist being submitted to the CLC after the final meeting is conducted.
Well, great points. And that actually helps us with CLCs not to have to handhold. So many of our support coordinators are quite excellent now and have been on so many calls that you are very competent and able to lead your own meetings. So if you let us know and we can help you set up a WebEx call, we're more than happy to do that. Allow that SC to lead the call and then get back with us with the specifics. So thanks, Michelle. Talk about my favorite document that goes along with this meeting. I love this document, the community checklist for residential community living moves, otherwise known as the checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Many pages long, but it covers absolutely everything for a move, and it's a very inclusive document. So it's actually very wide-reaching. In case someone is leaving my area and moving clear to St. Louis, of course, there's going to be something filled out in almost every box. If they're moving from one area of my city to another area of my city in Kansas City, there will be a lot of not applicables. So we understand that it's be a document that's usable across the state. So don't feel badly, in other words, if there's a lot of NAs on your document. It should be completed as much as possible and sent to ECLCs before that initial call or meeting's taking place. And I always ask for my SCs to fill out sections A through C as much as possible. And at that second call that they would do the cleanup of A through C and complete D with some comments at the end.
Bench applies to the sending support coordinator. Was the checklist document used, the SC, during the transition meeting with completion of the necessary follow-up, as Vonda mentioned, Section D? The checklist, along with the ISP, are the documentation that shows planning occurred and all the required components were completed. It applies to all scenarios of moves. The SC document is completed and shared with the appropriate team members. The appropriate team members may include the provider agency providing the supports, the receiving C and SC supervisor, the receiving CLC. They should always be getting a copy of that document.
Mm-hmm.
As applicable would be a behavior analyst if involved, other wraparound service providers, the receiving TCM TAC from the regional office, and perhaps even the individual and the guardian as requested. Pretty much anybody who participated in that transition meeting or transition call will get a copy.
And Michelle, in my years of doing this, we've had teams for transition calls we've had 3 people on the call, and I've had as many as 23 people on a call. So it can widely range as far as how many people you'll need to send things to. Well, situations where nearly all factors remain the same, and where the provider, service, and TCM remain the same. The list for residential community living moves document and Housemate tool can be completed for all moves. Completing the checklist, and the team came together to determine if the move was in the individual's best interest. All necessary topics have been addressed to ensure a smooth transition for the individual. Same roommates are simply moving to a new home, and this is what Michelle had mentioned earlier. The list still needs to be completed and sent to that planning team. Now, this is where the Housemate compatibility tool is not required because these individuals have obviously lived together before. So smarter, not harder. Situations where an individual changes location and stays with the same provider often get overlooked, though. So we do make sure that all parts of the planning process have occurred for situations. This pertains to the providers as well as the TCM agencies. So if a move is happening within an agency, give your area CLC a heads up. And here's the information we need from you. Their names, DMH ID numbers, the age that they're going to move within, moves, and then the phone. We can help you from there.
Sounds great. Here's of items that might apply from the checklist, including the SL site review, which may need to be completed if it's a new location. As I said, the address and other information. Those pieces need to be updated in CMOR as well as in the ISP. Other necessary entities may need to be informed of the move, such as the Social Security office or Medicaid office, the utilities company. If receiving medical supplies, that company needs to be made aware of the new address.
Absolutely.
And budgets and authorizations may need to be updated, especially the room and board when the regional office is the payee. If they're moving locations, it's likely that rent or utility amount will be changing.
Right. Things that we discuss. Have to have arrangements for transporting the individual and their belongings on the move date. If they're a registered sex offender, we have to update the information on the registry. That be a visit to the local sheriff's department, police department, or just updating it online, and any other applicable items. So options that appear to not be applicable should still be discussed by the team to ensure that this really is an accurate reflection of their needs when moving.
5 applies to the sending support coordinator. Sending SC update the ISP to reflect current service and support needs prior to the transition. Even if it's as simple as updating their address or their phone number, or more complex as in updating outcomes or adding information from a behavior support plan, the ISP still needs to be updated to reflect the current demographic information.
Absolutely. Benchmark number 6. Was a move transition meeting held within 30 days of the move? Very important. The team should get back together and discuss how the move went, how the person's doing, what they're doing during the day, if there are any issues. There may have been some unforeseen things that have come up because of a new location or some staff changes, something like that. So it's a great time to discuss those things. A move review meeting or call will be held 15 to 30 days after the move. A move review meeting call will be jointly facilitated by sending SC and CLC to include, well, involved. I won't read that because I think you all understand that, as I said earlier, teams can range from 3 to 23, so please just try not to leave anybody out. It's better to over-invite than to miss anyone.
The app status, everybody's favorite. Also related to the benchmarks from the transition monitoring tool will be entered into the action plan tracking system database. A copy of this information will be provided to the support coordinator and or the provider as applicable. It was designed to track findings from monitoring that require resolution as well as positive practices. Findings will only be entered by the CLC when one of the benchmarks is not met.
I just want to reassure you all that APPS isn't a gotcha system. It's not trying to find things that are wrong. In fact, I feel like SCLC is very understanding and very forgiving, and we do love to come out and train. That's a plug to come and see you all. But APPS really is when we have done our best a couple times to help try to correct something, and it does need to go ahead and start being monitored. We need to have the best possible transitions for everyone, and we can't do that if we have reoccurring issues. So OL and CLCs will be working with the support coordinator and or provider to evaluate the benchmarks on the transition monitoring tool and how findings entered into APPS can be resolved. Related to a TCM, then inform the SC supervisor, and send a copy of that APPS information. If the app is related to a provider, the CLC would inform the provider and send a copy of APPS information to them. And the CLC will then work with SC and SC supervisor or the provider agency and ensure resolution of whatever didn't go smoothly.
Finding is verified as being resolved, the CLC will enter that resolution verification date into the APPS database and notify the entity. If attempts to resolve the identified finding regarding the transition are not effective, the CLC will work with the TCM TAC or the provider relations team as necessary, possibly regional office administration, to develop a plan to resolve the issue.
The end report, monitoring findings entered into the APPS database, will be included on the TCM agency's annual report, completed by our TCM TACs. Process performance indicators, or benchmarks, will be included in the annual TCM monitoring review to determine evidence of the quality of the transition processes. Data entered into the app database will be included on the provider agency's annual trend report as well.
Division G would like to be able to track and trend or to compare the number of transitions occurring during a given period of time to the number of successful transitions, that is, where no issues were identified utilizing the 6 benchmarks. The purpose of the action plan tracking system is to show resolution when findings have been identified. CAPS is the only system we have to show Center for Medicaid Services, or CMS, that we take findings seriously, and we do want to work together to encourage resolutions which both make sense and can actually be implemented. Additionally, the division is working on ways to pull data to support if the benchmarks are being implemented as described in our process.
Great. So, bottom line, we're here to help. That actually is our job. We're here to assist you. So here are some friendly community living coordinator reminders. Transfers. Access the support coordination transfer contact brochure. It's updated monthly, and you can find it on the website. I don't know exactly what the other CLCs do, but I know that locally for myself in Kansas City, I do send that out to everyone saying here is the updated brochure. So transfer is when you are sending someone away to another TCM or another regional office in TCM. Reminder, just want to ensure that you are using the current version of all the documents that would be used. So some examples that you can find in our manual: the transfer form, the member profile form, and that usage in the database when we put someone on, the checklist or checklist for community residential living moves, and other documents. And there's actually a link there at the bottom of where you can find our community transition manual. Do live there. I really suggest saving that. The little star on your computer, you can save that as a favorite because we all do. I know we CLCs do, sometimes vendor services. We do a lot of transfers and transitions, but support coordination and support coordination supervision, they do that every day. So saying that could be very helpful, as those will be updated for you within that transition manual. Again, transitions are moves, and transfers are actually moving to another TCM or in a regional office. So please find that transitions and transfers are different.
Reminders. The Transition Manual webinar provides training on the overall transition process and is available on the DMHDD website. If you haven't seen the webinar or attended a local training by your CLC, we encourage you to do so. There is a link in this PowerPoint to access the webinar information. The CLC is available to provide local training regarding Guideline 67 process and benchmarks and additional consumer-specific questions that you might have.
I stressed that last one, Michelle. CLCs are available. Please take advantage of getting a hold of us and having us come out. We would actually love nothing better to come out and build these relationships with you all and with the provider agencies, because relationship is everything. Because if you build relationship, you build trust and you build all of that, and then we have a better team when we're tackling something really tough together. And those things do come along, and we will encounter situations that aren't always, the best situation for all involved. And when the tough times come, relationship is what we can fall back on. So let us come spend time with you, see you, meet everyone, and lead you all through this training. Tell us your situations. You may feel like you're telling us too much, but it sure is better to have too much information than not enough about people moving. And bottom line with that is health and safety. Where are our people living? And how are we really taking care of them if we haven't been able to let the QRN nurse at the regional office know where they are so they can visit them? So please, more is better. And if it's not something we need to know, Actually, I'll send that to so-and-so. I don't need to know that, but great job telling me. Communication is vital when it comes to transitions and transfers. Please make sure you notify your local CLC when one is moving. If they require a new TCM entity or additional office. If an individual is seeking residential services from a non-DMH setting. If an individual is seeking a new residential provider, or if an individual is having difficulty adjusting in a transition, we can pull in our area LBAs, behavioral people, different teams, and help support you with things that are going on. We are here to help, so please let us know. And if you are unsure, perhaps you're a newer employee listening to this, you're really unsure of exactly what a CLC does or how to even find their information, you'll find a link right there on the screen of how to identify your local CLC. Some offices are large enough now and do enough volume that we have 2 community living coordinators in each office. So that might take some doing to figure out which one is yours, but like I said, no questions dumb. You can always ask and we'll let you know who your specific CLC is. And it's better to over-communicate with us than to ever under-communicate.
At the beginning, if you have any questions, please include those here so that Wanda and I can meet with the other CLCs to review those questions and develop a frequently asked question document to be posted along with this presentation on the website. So to recap what we've reviewed today, we discussed what is transition monitoring and the difference between transition and transfer. We reviewed the 6 benchmarks and who they apply to. We shared information about the Action Plan Tracking System, or APS, and how we use that to track resolutions, and how that information is used in the Provider and TCM Annual Trend Report. And finally, we shared some helpful reminders, such as utilizing the SC Transfer Contact Brochure on a monthly basis, and finding the Community Transition Manual. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to reviewing your questions and working with you during future transition meetings.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for attending.